News is not perfect. Humans are not perfect. Media doesn't always get it right, and sometimes they do lie. Fake news exists. Here we have, from Recode, Mike has laid off the majority of its staff. The publisher is trying to sell the remainder of the company to Bustle Digital Group. For those that aren't familiar with Mike, they're actually not the worst, but they are far left, and they've done some particularly malicious, what's the right word for this? Let me tell you a story, okay? In 2016, I was in Janesville, Wisconsin, and there was a young woman arguing with an old man. All of a sudden, the young woman yells the man touched her breast. He claims he didn't. He had his hands up. According to numerous videos, he never touched her breast. She claimed he did. She punched him in the face. Someone then pepper sprayed her. What was the story? Well, Mike edited out the part where she punches the guy in the face. And mind you, the time frame from when she punches the guy in the face to when she gets pepper sprayed is less than a second. But what they did was a flash to white, so it looks like an edit, and then all you see is her going, "He touched me," and then all of a sudden the screen flashes, and she's being pepper sprayed. Why? The flash covered up where she punched him in the face, and then someone else sprayed her, and that was the narrative. Congratulations, Mike. You're a liar. You've lied. And the reason I'm saying this is because, as I mentioned, not all media is bad. I actually had friends who worked for Mike, who were good people, who didn't lie, who were straight up and honest. Totally honest. I've done interviews with them. The problem is, it happens enough to where you're going to get called out, and when people call you out, your system just can't work. These big investment companies, they're investing in this weird millennial digital far left nonsense. All right, let me tell you another story, and then we'll read through this. I used to work for Vice. Vice used to be awesome, and I'm a bit. It's a damn shame to see where they've gone in the past few years since I left. Vice News still isn't the worst, and you have to keep in mind, Vice News, totally different things. BuzzFeed News, different things, right? You go to Vice.com, you're going to see a bunch of weird nonsense. You're going to see dudes doing drugs off each other's butts. You go to Vice News, and you'll probably see people on the ground doing some kind of reporting. However, since I left, Vice News has kind of gotten a little sensational and has done some questionable things. But when I left Vice, I went to go work for a company called Fusion. And Fusion wanted to be nonpartisan. They had these posters in the office saying, "We will not take sides. We will not be partisan. We will be for young people." And then they realized, the marketing people, I should say, realized, and I should say, let me rephrase. Marketing people said, you got to be far left. You got to be progressive. You have to embrace gender and all this weird nonsense. And they said, okay, let's do it. It didn't work. And they basically collapsed. They rebranded themselves. They bought Gawker. It's been a complete and total mess, a nightmare. Well, Mike is facing basically the same thing because let me tell you, the Daily Wire is doing very well. The Daily Caller is doing very well. These conservative websites are doing extremely well, and these weird, fringy, pandering, far-left nonsense sites are not doing well. I don't understand why I have to explain this to people. When you adopt fringe beliefs, you're not going to get an audience because moderates don't live in this weird, fringy world of a billion genders. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but that's just reality. Okay? The people who believe in this far left stuff, there's very few of them. Let's read the story. I've dragged it on too long. Mike is laying off the majority of its staff while the digital publisher works on a deal to sell the remainder of its assets to Bustle Digital Group. Mike CEO Chris Altchek announced the layoffs at a staff meeting this morning. Until today, the company had employed more than 100 people. I've asked Mike to provide details on the layoffs, including the total number of people who will lose their jobs. Corey Hike, Mike's publisher, has already left the company. I'm told that under the proposed terms of the Bustle deal, Altchek and co-founder Jake Horowitz would stay on after the acquisition. Mike raised more than $60 million to build a millennial-focused news company, but couldn't find a business model to support its costs, which include a one-floor office in Manhattan's World Trade Center. An earlier version of the story incorrectly reported the size of Mike's office. It is a one-floor office. I have been there. Here's another thing. Here's another thing about these companies, right? My operation. I produce these videos. I make a living. And you're just in my living room. Oh, it's just like a studio area. And I just use a small portion of it for the filming, but I use the bigger portion of it for other work. The point is, it's just a part of where I live. It's a part of my house, okay? I don't need to go buy an office somewhere and hire a massive staff because then you just end up it doesn't work, right? It's mind-blowing to me how you have these millennials making, $35,000 to sometimes $50,000 or even $60,000 a year to sit around in an office and write about the size of Brad Pitt's bulge. It's not necessarily a dig at Mike, But you know these digital millennial media companies have young people who write nonsense all day. Let me tell you a story, okay? There have been editorial meetings for which I have been privy to where people are sitting around going, there's no news today. What do we write about? I don't know. Write about something. And they ended up doing a Google search. They found a Reddit story from 6 months ago, and they rewrote it because they need to put out content to get advertisers to make money. That's what they do. Now listen, it's one thing if you're doing opinion, right? I do opinion, and sometimes I do pull up old stories. But because it's usually because something happened that I think is relevant to what I'm talking about, and then I want to bring it up. Like the video I did on my main channel today brings up some stories from like a few weeks ago and from a few days ago, but it's mostly because I have an opinion I want to express, and that's fine. But the specific thing I'm talking about is them re-reporting news from 6 months ago. Look, I'll just say this. If you're a digital media outlet, there's no news, write some opinion pieces, by all means. Just make your opinions based in reality. But let's just point out, this company laying everybody off probably didn't have to if they didn't get a World Trade Center floor. Apparently, according to some other journalists, it cost something like $200,000 per month to have this floor. I've been there. It's amazing. I filmed a time lapse in one of my videos. You can see like all of New York. I was confused as to why they had this office when many other digital outlets are in rinky-dink slums, in the outskirts of Brooklyn or something. But let's keep reading. Facebook recently canceled a deal with Mike to publish a news video series. People familiar with the company say the move removed a crucial source of revenue and scared away potential acquirers and investors. They say here's Hike's note to Mike employees announcing her departure. Now, I'm not going to read this long email about people getting laid off, people quitting. But what I do want to point out is that what I said at the beginning about fringe outlets, right? If your politics are extremely, if there's a very small audience for what you're pitching, you're not going to make enough money to support yourself. Mike, they're going bye-bye. We have seen layoffs from many digital media outlets, but it's not unique to Mike because we also have this story. This is from just the other day. I don't know what the trace is, but I didn't see very many other sources on this because it tends to be activists who hate the NRA. But NRA TV's operation lays off several employees. Let's point a few things out. Guns in America. It says news and notes on guns in America. Guns in America are relatively common, more common than anywhere else in the world. And there's something like, 3 million people own multiple guns. There's a lot of gun owners in this country. More so than there are fringe weirdos who believe in far left nonsense. That's why I believe the NRA is only laying off several employees instead of all of their employees. But the point I want to bring up is whether or not you like the NRA TV, I'm not here to rag on them, and to that extent, Mike either. They've done specific things I think are okay. The point is, NRA is also servicing a very select group of people, and it's not easy to run a business when you're targeting a very niche demographic. But here's what I want to say about the NRA. They're targeting gun owners, which there are many. That's easy to do. Who Mike was targeting with being far left is nebulous. And look, I don't know if you watched my video from my main channel today, but I talked about how feminists are now offending themselves, right, with the word Womixn. Yes, WOMXN. They're self-offensive, which means, as many of you know, the left regularly eats their own. How do you try and you'll write an article saying here's to all the Womixn, and then all of a sudden everyone's yelling at you, and you're like, but that's the inclusive word we're supposed to use. You can't do it. With the NRA, all you pretty much have to do to make sure you're talking to gun owners is say, we want to protect your right to own guns, and we want to talk about different kinds of guns. And they're going to be like, sounds good to me. It's much easier to produce content for a cohesive group like gun owners as it is for an incohesive group, an incoherent group like the far left. That being said, I will reiterate, creating a media company for one group of people doesn't necessarily work, and so now the NRA is even seeing layoffs too. Longtime NRA TV producer and correspondent Cameron Gray tweeted Wednesday that he and several colleagues had been terminated this morning. Gray said he had been an employee at the gun group's video arm for almost 10 years. He had worked as a producer for Cam & Company, a news and talk show hosted by NRA TV personality Cam Edwards that covered a wide range of political topics beyond just guns. And that's true too. The NRA TV isn't just guns. It tries to be conservative. The point is, though, I don't watch NRA TV, and in all honesty, I was asked to appear on NRA TV to talk about some issues. I didn't want to do it, and it's not because I have an issue with gun owners. I'd certainly love to debate gun owners and learn things because I'm not a gun person. But my issue was more that it's just too focused on one specific thing, right? It's the NRA. It's not like a media outlet, right? So, though they're trying to be, they say the dismissals come on the back of a string of evidence that suggests the NRA is in poor financial health. According to tax filings, the gun group's revenue fell by $55 million from 2016 and 2017, leaving the organization with an $18 million deficit, according to a lawsuit filed against insurance broker Lockton Affinity earlier this year. The NRA has not been able to renew umbrella liability coverage essential to running a media operation or putting on public events. I am not going to finish reading this article. I wanted to point out the issue of media, and these usually, like all the stories about this, are about activists who don't like the NRA. I'm not here to rag on the NRA, nor to read some outlet who's angry with them, just to point out that the layoffs occurred. And that's it. We have this tweet I pulled up. Max Tanney tweeted this morning, Mike has announced in a meeting that is laying off almost all staff, though a small number of employees will be notified of continuing roles. The reason I bring this up, News Guild statement on Mike. Shuttering an entire news operation at a moment's notice, primarily as a result of an inexperienced leadership team and chronic mismanagement, cannot become the new norm in media. Agreed, and I blame them for it. But what are you going to do? You're a union. You can't complain about the fact that business was run poorly. There you have it. Media, digital media, you have to make sure you're talking to people. I'll say this. It may be true that centrists are few and far between, and most people find themselves on the left or the right. And that means it's very difficult for me when my content is rather centrist, when I can make a video that's relatively critical of some people on the right and then everyone rags at me. Like I have a video from a week ago, it's got like 50% thumbs down or something because people didn't like my opinion. I made a video about why diversity is good and debated with Tucker Carlson. For the most part, I'm really critical of the hypocritical nature of the left, and that kind of gets me by with moderate conservatives. But the bigger, like more diehard conservatives, not super happy, right? It would be a lot easier for me as a channel if I targeted the left or the right. So that means my group, my target market is relatively small, but I'm just one person. I don't have to pay for a staff. I don't got to buy an office. And that means if I'm targeting a smaller market share, moderates and centrists, then I can survive. But you can't, Mike, because you targeted the far left, not the moderate left. It's not going to work. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I will see you tomorrow on the main channel at 4 p.m.